watch him with his wife, then went to daily mass at 6:30 the next morning. Robert Hanssen kept two lives running in parallel for 22 years. Robert Philip Hanssen was born in Chicago on April 18, 1944, and raised in the Norwood Park neighborhood in a Lutheran household. His father, Howard, a Chicago police officer, was allegedly emotionally abusive toward him during his childhood. Hanssen graduated from William Howard Taft High School in 1962 and went on to Knox College in Galesburg, Illinois, where he earned a bachelor's degree in chemistry in 1966. What followed was a decade of restarts. He applied to the National Security Agency for a cryptography position and was turned down over budget constraints. He enrolled in dental school at Northwestern University, then switched his focus to business 3 years in, walking away in 1971 with an MBA in accounting and information systems. He took a job at an accounting firm and quit after a single year. From there he joined the Chicago Police Department as an internal affairs investigator specializing in forensic accounting. It was during his dental school years at Northwestern that Hanssen met Bernadette Bonnie Walk, a staunch Roman Catholic. They married in 1968, and Hanssen converted from Lutheranism to Catholicism for her. That conversion would define the rest of his life. He and Bonnie became deeply involved in Opus Dei, attending Mass weekly, sending their 3 sons to the Heights School in Potomac, Maryland, and their 3 daughters to Oak Crest School for Girls in Vienna, Virginia, both institutions affiliated with the organization. A priest at Oak Crest later said Hanssen had attended a 6:30 a.m. daily mass for over a decade. He sometimes also went to the noontime mass at the Catholic Information Center in downtown Washington. In January 1976, Hanssen left the Chicago Police and joined the FBI. He was sworn in as a special agent on January 12, 1976, and posted first to Gary, Indiana. 2 years later, the Bureau transferred him and his growing family, eventually 6 children, to the field office in New York City. In 1979 he moved into counterintelligence, tasked with building a database of Soviet intelligence for the FBI, a job that put him close to exactly the kind of material he would soon start selling. That same year, Hanssen approached the Soviet GRU directly and offered his services. He would later tell the FBI, after his capture, that he had no political or ideological motive whatsoever, only financial ones. This first cycle of espionage ran from 1979 to 1981. During it he handed over details of FBI bugging operations and lists of suspected Soviet agents secretly working for American intelligence, including his most damaging single betrayal, Dmitri Polyakov, a Soviet general who had spent years passing enormous volumes of information to the CIA. Hanssen was 22 years from arrest, and no one at the Bureau suspected a thing. In 1981 Hanssen transferred to FBI headquarters in Washington and moved his family to Vienna, Virginia, taking a budget office job that gave him access to records on wiretapping and electronic surveillance across the entire Bureau. 3 years later he moved to the Soviet Analytical Unit, evaluating whether Soviet volunteers offering intelligence were genuine or doubled agents. In 1985 he transferred again, back to New York, and on a business visit to Washington that year, he resumed spying. On October 1, 1985, he sent an anonymous letter to the KGB asking for $100,000 and naming 3 agents secretly working for the FBI, Boris Yuzhin, Valery Martinov, and Sergei Motorin. Unknown to Hanssen, Aldrich Ames had already betrayed all 3 earlier that same year. Martinov and Motorin were recalled to Moscow, tried, and executed by gunshot to the back of the head. Yuzhin, who had already come under KGB suspicion after losing a concealed camera in the Soviet consulate in San Francisco, served 6 years before a general amnesty freed him. He later immigrated to the United States. Because the FBI blamed Ames for the leak, Hanssen was never investigated. Recalled to Washington again in 1987, Hanssen was assigned to find the man who had betrayed Martinov and Motorin, in effect, ordered to hunt himself. He wrote the study, kept himself out of it, and handed the entire thing to the KGB in 1988, including its list of Soviets who had approached the FBI about moles. That same year, a government report noted he'd committed a serious security breach during the debriefing of a Soviet defector. His own agents reported it to a supervisor, and nothing happened. In 1989, he tipped off the KGB that State Department official Felix Bloch was under investigation, causing the Soviets to abruptly cut contact with Bloch and leaving the FBI without enough evidence to charge him, though the State Department later fired him and denied his pension. That same year, Hanssen disclosed U.S. plans for measurement and signature intelligence, and revealed the existence of an FBI tunnel dug beneath the Soviet embassy's decoding room, a project the Bureau had never dared to actually use for fear of exposure. He was paid $55,000 for it the following month. Twice, he handed the Soviets complete lists of American double agents. In 1990, Hanssen's own brother-in-law, FBI employee Mark Walk, reported that Hanssen's sister-in-law had found a pile of cash on a dresser in the Hanssen house, and that Hanssen had once talked about retiring in Poland. His supervisor took no action. When the USSR collapsed in December 1991, Hanssen cut contact with his handlers for 10 months, fearing exposure amid the upheaval. In 1992, he made his riskiest move yet, walking into the Russian embassy's parking garage in person, identifying himself by his code name Ramon Garcia, and offering himself as a disaffected FBI agent. The GRU officer he approached didn't recognize the name and drove off. Russia filed an official protest with the State Department, apparently believing Hanssen was a triple agent testing them. The FBI's inquiry into the incident went nowhere. Hanssen kept taking chances that should have ended him years earlier. In 1993, he hacked into a colleague's computer, printed a classified document, and handed it to the man, Ray Mislock, saying, "You didn't believe me that the system was insecure." Mislock later theorized Hanssen had actually been checking whether he was under investigation and invented the demonstration as cover. In 1994, he expressed interest in transferring to the new National Counterintelligence and Security Center, then withdrew the moment he learned it required a polygraph. In 1997, convicted mole Earl Edwin Pitts told the FBI he suspected Hanssen, specifically citing the Mislock incident, the second agent to name him outright. Nothing happened. When IT staff investigated his desktop after a reported failure, NSD Chief Johnny Sullivan had it impounded. The Bureau's own CART unit confirmed someone had installed a password cracking program that triggered a security lockup. Hanssen claimed he'd only been trying to hook up a color printer and needed to bypass an administrative password to do it. He was warned and nothing more. While that inquiry was underway, Hanssen searched the FBI's own case files for his name and address to see if he was a suspect, found nothing, and re-established contact with Russia's SVR in the autumn of 1999. Meanwhile, a joint CIA-FBI mole hunt, running since Ames's 1994 arrest under the code name Greysuit, had settled on entirely the wrong man. Two unexplained breaches, the collapsed block case and the leaked embassy tunnel, didn't fit Ames, who'd been posted in Rome and had no FBI access. By 1998, profilers had fixed on CIA officer Brian Kelly. Investigators searched his house, tapped his phone, and surveilled his family. In November 1998, they sent a man with a foreign accent to Kelly's door to warn him the FBI was onto him and tell him to flee via a metro station the next day. Kelly reported it immediately. He was interrogated along with his ex-wife, 2 sisters, and 3 children, then placed on administrative leave, falsely accused for roughly 2 more years while the real source of the leak sat a few corridors away. The actual break came when the FBI paid Russian officer Alexander Shchebak of $7 million for a file on an anonymous source called Only B. There was no name in it, but there was an audio tape of a July 21, 1986 conversation, and Agent Michael Wagersbach recognized the voice without being able to place it. Buried in the same file were notes quoting George S. Patton's line about the purple-pissing Japanese. FBI analyst Bob King remembered Hanssen using that exact phrase. Wagersbach played the tape again and knew. Fingerprints on a trash bag in the file confirmed it. Rather than arrest him immediately, the FBI promoted Hanssen into a supervisory computer security role to pull him back into headquarters, away from sensitive material, and assigned him a young assistant, Eric O'Neill, whose real job was surveillance. O'Neill discovered Hanssen relied on a Palm 3 organizer to store information and managed to get hold of it long enough for technicians to download and decrypt its contents, the evidence that closed the case. In his final weeks, Hanssen seemed to sense danger. He inquired about a job outside the bureau, believed he'd heard bugging sounds through his car radio that the FBI later couldn't reproduce, and wrote to his Russian contacts that he'd been shifted into a do-nothing job outside of regular access to information, warning that something has aroused the sleeping tiger. He made one more dead drop anyway. On February 18, 2001, after dropping a friend at the airport, he drove to Foxstone Park in Vienna, placed a strip of white tape on a park sign as a signal, and taped a bag of documents beneath a wooden footbridge. Agents moved in at once. His first words were, "What took you so long?" The Bureau waited 2 more days to see if a handler would appear before announcing the arrest on February 20. Represented by attorney Plato Kasharis, Hanssen pleaded GU,